Good evening, everybody. I'm going to spend a couple of minutes, since I'm the last speaker this evening, talking about your thoughts, your opinions. Now, what do you think when you hear that? It seems like a pretty scary subject because in our society today, I believe we've forgotten the value of our thoughts and our opinions. And I think this is largely due to our media. Now, I'm not going to stand up here and blame everything on the media because that's not going to get us anywhere. But I do think we should call our media into question to see how we can change it so it doesn't change us. The first type of media I want to talk about tonight is social media. Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, Instagram. We all have these apps on our phones that take up so much memory and allow us to interact with the people around us. Now, these sites that we get on and spend, in my personal opinion, way too much time on, allow us to connect with cousins across the nation, allow us to see what our friends are doing around the world, and allow us to see what our mom has made for dinner. But when we're looking at the posts and tweets that our thumbs are constantly scrolling through, do we really think about what we're reading? Or are we just autopilot filing it away as, oh, that was cool, that was good, oh, I didn't really like that? When did we decide that that's how we were going to process what our friends and family were saying? Why did we just stop thinking about it? You know, and then there's the person, we all have this person on our Facebook who is extremely political. They're either very liberal or very conservative, it doesn't really matter, but they post those 2-foot-long posts that we just skip over because we've been taught that that's just obnoxious, that we shouldn't give them the time of day because they're closed-minded. But when did we decide that we weren't going to really decide for ourselves what we thought about what they were saying? I love this picture. Social media can get pretty overwhelming sometimes, and I think this picture illustrates that pretty well. The next type of media I want to talk about tonight is news and social news media. We all know what news media is: Fox News, CNN, MSNBC. These sites and TV stations allow us to understand what's going on in the world around us. They report from everything from the weather, traffic information, international news, letting you know what's happening in your world. The next type of news media is a pretty new industry to me because I just didn't know it existed. And that's social news media. And it's still news media, but it's combined with a social aspect. And a shining example of this is BuzzFeed. We all know what BuzzFeed is. They post on Facebook and YouTube those silly videos we like to quote and laugh at. But it really is an actual news company. They post everything from what's happening in the Middle East to what's happening in your backyard. And they're known for going places that normal mainstream news places won't go. They have everything from how to make avocado toast to what's happening in the Middle East. But what we've forgotten about these stations is that the purpose of media is to inform, to educate, and to entertain. Now, nowhere on that list does it say we're supposed to take what they post for face value. We're not supposed to read the opinions of the reporter on Fox News and say, that's what I'm going to think right off the bat. But oftentimes, we do that. We're in such a hurry to get through our day, to get on to the next thing, that we don't really think about what we're reading. I want to call my generation, especially information junkies. We're constantly hungry for the next bit of information, for the next trivia so that we can bring it out in conversation. And I'm guilty of this as well, where we're just trying to impress that person, impress that teacher, impress that friend with the information we have, but we don't really know what we're talking about because we didn't spend the time to think about it. And so, where did we lose track? Where did we stop thinking? Why are we on autopilot now? And there are those among us who understand that it doesn't have to be that way, but it's pretty few and far between. So why do we follow the crowd? I think a really great example of this is how all 12-year-old girls love those obnoxious boy bands. Everyone knows what I'm talking about. So like One Direction, the Jonas Brothers when they were popular, you know, all 12-year-old girls love these bands. But do they really? I remember when I was young, I wasn't really into the boy bands. I was more into 70s music. But instead of saying that, I kind of just kept my mouth shut, because we're trained from a very young age that if our opinion differs from those around us, that we're gonna be outsiders. You know, you can see the group of friends talking, and one will be daring enough to say something against the group, and everyone looks at them like, how dare you? Why on earth would you try to stir the pot and change what we're talking about? So they understand from a very young age that if I just follow the crowd, I'll be okay. And I think this is from either unawareness of how valuable our thoughts are, or if we are aware, it's out of fear. And it's not out of cowardice that we do this, it's out of self-preservation. We're trying to make friends because we understand how important they are. And so we value our friendships above our personal thoughts. But there have been people in our history who have broken this mold, who have understood that their thoughts are valuable, more valuable than you could even say. The first person I want to bring to your attention tonight is Alexander Hamilton. Now, this founding father was steeped in obscurity for quite some time until a recent Broadway musical made him famous again. But he's so much more than a musical. This man understood himself to the extent that you could probably call him a genius. And during his time, he helped write something called the Federalist Papers. Now, these papers were in defense of the Constitution of the United States, which when it was first written had a terrible public approval rating. The media bashed it, tore it to shreds, basically told the public, if you agree with what's being written, you're crazy. So Alexander Hamilton, who was in complete support of the Constitution, rounded up his friends James Madison and John Jay and said, let's write something in defense of the thing we've seen written. They were only ever supposed to write 25 essays, but they ended up writing 86. Hamilton himself wrote 51 of them because he understood how valuable his thoughts were to the people around him. He understood that whether or not the public approved of what he was writing, he understood why it was important and why it needed to be said. The next person I want to bring to your attention is Eleanor Roosevelt. She is the unsung hero of the late Great Depression, early New Deal age. She went above and beyond the call of the First Lady. I was recently learning about her in a history class, and I was astounded to learn what she was capable of. As most of you know, her husband had polio, and he was unable to travel around the country for most of his presidency. And so she took it upon herself to go out and find injustice and to right it, and to help those who couldn't help themselves. And in her day, the media around her told her that everything was fine. There wasn't an immigration issue. There wasn't a racial problem. There were no problems that concerned her enough that she should need to go out of her way being the First Lady. But she didn't believe that. She left the White House and went to the Deep South and all around the country and talked with people, came back, wrote about it, and told her husband, the president, how to act. If that's not incredible, I don't know what is. So I want to ask these questions of you. When was the last time your opinion differed from the crowd? When was the last time you had your own opinion? And did you share it? And if you didn't, why didn't you? Was it out of fear? Was it because you're on autopilot? Now, I'm not saying that we're all on autopilot, zombies sitting here scrolling through our news feeds, blindly experiencing the world but not really knowing what's happening. But we have to make a conscious choice not to do that. I'm guilty of it as well. For example, I have some friends sitting in the audience tonight who know this to be true. They were talking about a couple political, social issues that our opinions greatly differed on. And so when they asked me my opinion, out of fear of them not liking me and out of fear of losing our friendship, I just said, I value our friendship too much to talk about it. And they're like, what do you mean? Well, why won't you tell us your thoughts? And I'm like, no, I don't want to get in an argument. I don't want to get in a fight. And they're like, well, why would we get in a fight? We're friends. And it took me aback for a moment to realize that they valued my thoughts more than I valued mine. Why is that? When did we in our society think that we should put others and their opinions of ourselves above our own opinions and thoughts about ourselves and about the world around us? So, what should we do now? How can we change? I challenge you next time you're on social media or next time you're looking at Fox News or CNN or BuzzFeed to not just read the article, but to try to understand it. Because you can read through it, you can move on to the next thing, and it's just information that's in your head. But unless you really understand what you're looking at and what you think about it, it's not going to do you any good. How can you use your voice tomorrow, next month, next year? Because it's important. It's important that you understand how valuable it is, because if we keep going on the path we're going, we're just going to let the media and our social media run amok without us doing anything about it. You've been a lovely audience tonight. You've sat through technical difficulties. You've sat through now 9 speakers pouring out their hearts to you. And you have a choice now. You have a choice to just file away what you've heard as, that was a good experience, that was educational. Or, on your way home tonight, when you're driving home, or maybe tomorrow, or next week, whenever you get the chance, you can really think about what you've heard. You can dissect it and think, what do I think about that? How does that affect me? How can I use that information to affect the world around me? Because we are each capable of change. We, as human beings, have been given the precious gift and right to affect the world around us. But oftentimes we don't, A, because we don't know how, and B, because we're not aware that we can. But we can. Isn't that incredible? That we, as human beings, have the ability to stand up and speak our minds. But oftentimes we don't, out of fear. I challenge you to no longer be afraid, to turn the autopilot off. Whether it means posting a short little thing on Facebook about what you've heard tonight, or calling up a friend or a couple friends and saying, hey, let's get together and talk about what's going on in our world. It doesn't have to be hard. Change doesn't happen overnight, even though we all wish it would. It starts with one person deciding that they're going to be different, with one person taking one step forward in the opposite direction. Thank you.